Okay, so just while people are doing the final bit of assembling, I'm going to introduce Professor Elena Marco from UE. So Elena is a passionate and vision-led academic who works as a leader, educator, researcher, and built environment professional. And over the past 20 years, Elena's developed an active research portfolio, particularly in the crossover between architecture, health, and sustainability. And her combination of skills in that regard has allowed her to make a significant positive transformation in the Department of Architecture and Built Environment that she's led for over 6 years. Now, earlier this year, in March, Elena took on the leadership of the brand new College of Arts, Technology and Environment at UWE, and so is now responsible for some 14,000 students across subjects in science, technology, engineering, arts and mathematics, or STEAM for short. And so Elena and her team are focused on building a global reputation for the college with creativity and science at the heart of everything that it does. So I'm delighted to welcome Elena to be our plenary chair. We have 2 plenary members whom Elena will introduce in just a moment. And I think it's fair to say, Elena, we're hoping that this session can enable quite a lot of audience participation and for us to try and identify some common strands and themes and questions we want to work with.
Yes, indeed. So thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to come and talk with kind of Linda, Craig, and all the team here today. Yes, can you see from my voice that I am not English? I am a Spaniard at heart, and I've been in this country for 21 years. So I must say your housing challenge is something I have never understood, grasped, or kind of how it works. Because I have built houses both in Spain and the UK, and it's one of the kind of things that in kind of how you do things in the UK is never been understood. Why do you sell houses by rooms? Why do you not know the size of your spaces and houses? Why do you not consider the fact that people in those houses have got stuff? People need things to live. Why do you try to do radical housing solutions when do you not have the basics right? I'll leave it there. And let's see, I put enough controversy as a starting point, and let me now introduce you to 2 fantastic panelists that are going to help me heat up the discussion in the next 40 minutes. So please welcome Lisa Brown, who is our nurse. I believe this morning we talked about it, the department that should be leading housing delivery, maybe should be the health department. So she is a nurse by training, 23 years of nursing career, and she spent it in various settings, emergency departments, where she worked and achieved a senior role as an emergency nurse and practitioner at a London hospital. She also has been a health visitor, that means I have seen it all in the houses. And she always loved the diversity in nursing, in everything that she has done. And you will say, why is she here? Because she turned a property developer. Because she encounters so many problems in relation to developing property and good quality property, and kind of she saw everything in the other perspective as nurse. So she's going to give us probably a very challenging element today. Should I introduce Elly and then I'll give you that? And Elly, last minute addition to the panel, I have never met anyone so brave. Yeah? So Elena, Elly set up a practice with one of my students. He was one of my first graduates ever when I started at UN in 2005, so that was amazing. Thank you, Elly, for joining us. So Elly and Matt set up Arbor Architects, and they have also been working very much having the context and the community at the heart of everything that they do. And they are looking, after having worked with Craig, Elly, and in Archetype, both of them, they've always kind of are looking for cost delivery in relation how you can deliver sustainability, health, at the same time, good housing quality. And one of the things that the ethos of the practice has been is ensuring that that is kind of talking to the community and talking to the stakeholder, the user, in order to deliver good quality housing going forward. So I think, from our perspective, it clearly is community is a key, and it will be a key theme that both speakers will actually guide you through today. So Lisa, 3 minutes, spark the debate.
Right, there's a real shortage of property for people with support needs. Whether that support needs is a learning disability, autism, mental health, or something like a survivor of domestic abuse, a veteran, someone who's been homeless. There's a real shortage of these properties. We've talked today about a whole load of amazing solutions, but a lot of them are quite long term. They take a long time to implement. We're talking 5-10 years for a lot of these things to actually come to light. And I'm a bit impatient, to be honest. Today, this morning, outside here, there was a person asleep on a bench under a plastic cover. That's not good enough. Opposite a big empty house. I think the house is being done up, but that makes me a bit cross that we're not sorting this out quicker. We've got, as Juliet said, we've got thousands of people in hospitals with long-term mental health, with learning disabilities, who should be in the community. They should be part of our community. And I actually think that private property investors are part of the solution. I feel like I might get tomatoes thrown at me, but I do really feel that they are. I feel like private property investors own or have the ability to buy properties where people want to live, properties in normal streets to be part of communities. Most people with support needs don't want to live in a scheme. They want to live in a home. They want to live somewhere that we would all recognise as a home, and that's really important to them. And these are the properties that most property investors are used to buying, doing up, renovating, and helping meet people's needs. I acknowledge there are bad property investors around. I know there are. I know there are some terrible examples of private property investors. But I spend a lot of my life talking to property investors who are brilliant, really ethical, really committed to making homes the best they can be for the people that they live in them, who view this as a business but a really well-run, good way of operating. And so I think actually we need to start collaborating and understanding private property investors and working together to meet some of these problems that we have. I think it's a really good short-term solution whilst we're working on these longer-term solutions. I would love to see everyone with a support need live in a community-led housing community. I think that would be amazing. But actually that's going to take years and years and years for that to come about. And we don't want people sleeping on benches at the moment. So I think part of this is understanding private property investors. And whilst it's very easy to sit there and bash private property investors, say, oh, they're all making loads of money, they're all this, they're all that, whatever your opinion is of them, actually understanding some of the challenges. And I know this morning, she's actually left, Francesca, but she was talking about some of the property investors refusing to let properties to some of the people that they support. And that's true, but actually understanding why that is, as a property investor, you can't get a mortgage. It's very difficult to get a mortgage if the tenant in your property has support needs. There's a really limited pool of mortgages. So actually you might have, I speak all the time to property investors who want to let their properties to providers, to support providers, to charities, but they can't because they can't get the mortgages, they can't get the lending. There's a real problem with the finance, with the insurance, and there's things that really need to be changed quite simply to make things better. I think that's probably my rant over.
I'm quite loud, but the microphone helps here. So I'm going to leave you 2 points, I think, for us to debate later. 2 things. Short-term approach is the solution, working with property investors. Can they really help what we've been talking today? If mortgages and mortgages cannot be achieved when you are renting properties with people with needs, is that the new approach that we need to consider? I leave it there, and now I'll bring a different perspective from Elly. Let's go.
Hello. So I came here today to listen and to learn, but I find myself with a microphone in my hand, so excuse me if it's a little unprepared. But I think I was lucky enough to start my architectural career here in Bristol, working with Craig on really interesting radical housing projects such as Lilac, which you all heard about earlier. I then moved on to work with Archetype, who are a practice who specialise in passive house, but also very socially responsible projects, particularly housing. We have now set up our own practice, Arbor Architects, and we continue this work. So I thought it would be useful just to summarise what we think radical housing is, and it picks up on a lot of the points raised by the speakers we've heard earlier today. And I think broadly it relates to kind of four things, and that is quality housing, and what I mean by that is high-performing housing. So housing that reduces the performance gap between how we think it's going to perform at the design stage and how it actually performs when people use it. And that is by, making the buildings well insulated, airtight, with good ventilation systems. That ties in very closely with making buildings healthy. Again, that is reducing the risk of things like mold growth. We saw in some of the images of these houses where people were living, which can cause asthma and other respiratory problems. But also understanding how using bio-based materials can stop material off-gassing and VOCs and create healthier environments. Then there's another issue with environment and where people want to be living. We know we're facing a climate emergency, and part of that is habitat loss, biodiversity loss. And when we're thinking about delivering housing, we need to be thinking about the places where people want to be living and how we can make them regenerative and biodiversity positive, and how this affects people's well-being. And lastly, there's the kind of social aspect to this, how we can create neighbourhoods that connect people, that tackle things like loneliness and lack of inclusion. And again, we've touched on some of those topics. So I guess as a practice, it would be very easy for us to work for clients who can afford to build well, but we choose to work for community housing groups, people who are delivering affordable and social housing. And I guess there's a couple of reasons for this. One is, as a society, it's very easy for the wealthy to afford high quality products and services, and they might invest in these, and then they can benefit them for a very long time without spending any more money because they last a long time and they perform well. Whereas the poorer members of our society can't afford to make such quality purchases, and they end up having to keep buying and they remain in poverty. It's a kind of cycle. And I think that applies to housing. And so actually the most vulnerable in our society need the highest performing, high quality housing with the lowest energy bills to help their situation. And lastly, just to touch on cost, it's always the question we get asked. To deliver high-performing, better quality homes, it does cost more. But I think, again, as a society, we're very good at thinking short-term and about what things cost now. And we're less good at thinking longer term, and as a practice we call this our acorn brain. You know, how can we sow seeds for good things to happen in the future? And actually, if you think, you know, local authorities and registered social landlords and developers need to start thinking longer term, and how, you know, spending a bit more now to make better quality housing reduces the costs to us as a society long term of picking up the pieces when, you know, people's health deteriorates and all the kind of social implications that might have. So I guess there's a challenge there.
Thank you.
So social responsibility or building social capital with a strong sustainability skills alongside to property investors as the short-term solution. So kind of that is what we're talking about. I'm also going to contextualize that of when we started talking about this debate, probably with Linda and kind of Craig, probably 4, 5, 6 weeks ago, things were not looking like they are. So I didn't know they were going to do a mini budget and then screw up the country in 3 days. I thought we kind of, you know, I didn't think I would, sorry, I'm not political, I'm Spanish, okay, so don't kill me. I didn't think I would think of Theresa May as a very good prime minister. I didn't ever care that I even thought about it one day. And so things happened clearly from one day to the next. I assume all of you have felt kind of or panic when you think about your mortgage repayments, if you have one, and when you look at your meter in your own kitchen or wherever you've got it hidden away, probably now hidden away to not see the prices, is something that is also make you think differently about housing. So let's start the debate. Is property investor the short-term solution? Is social responsible architecture the way to go to ensure high sustainability and let's call it biodiversity-driven approach to delivering housing? Anyone? Questions here? Go for it.
Okay, so I have an opposing view on private property investors being a part of the solution because I fundamentally think that they're a very large part of the problem. And this country's housing problems, as you said, are very different to Spain, and you don't understand many of our problems. And it may be because in this country, home ownership has essentially become an economic backbone of the country. So, and I think to solve the problems that we have, that have grown essentially out of you know, a constantly an ever-growing housing market with prices ever going up and salaries not staying anywhere near. This divergence we've seen between income and home value is what's causing the panic now about looking at your mortgages. Obviously, suddenly economic changes, circumstances have changed, and people are already fully stretched on the credit, and all of a sudden this is becoming a threat to the entire housing market. And if that goes, the whole country goes down the drain. My theory is that to solve this problem, we really need to get away from the concept of homes as personal assets. To break this model, we were talking earlier, we're very stuck in this tenure scenario of being a freeholder, a private tenant, or a social tenant. Those are our three tenures.
So
I need a new social tenure.
We'll have to do, we've only got one mic and we'll do roving, but if you could summarise the point being made and then reply to it.
What?
And then I'll run around with the mic.
You want me to summarise the point?
Well, just very briefly for the people at the room.
I might get it wrong, that's the problem.
No. Well, you own the mic now, so you can...
I can modify the domain here, can I?
I should have waited for the mic. I hadn't quite got to my final point. I almost lost the thread, but I think really fundamentally my argument...
Let's walk around.
There's a final point.
Fundamentally, my argument would be that we need to get away from the model of private investment in property, and we need to see our national built environment as a national asset. And we need to look at these new economic models, community-led housing, to be able to, you know, link finance up to that.
Thank you. I actually completely agree with you, but I just don't think we're going to get there quickly enough. That's the problem. I think we've got centuries of home ownership and as a society we're aspirational about our home ownership. We're a bit weird in the UK, aren't we, in that homes are really important in a way. Home ownership is really important in the UK in a way that it isn't in a lot of other countries. So I agree with your principle, but I don't think in the short term we're going to get there. I just think that working with private property investors, the good ones, is a way to actually solve some of the solution in the shorter term. I would love to get to a point where we're there. And I'd love, obviously we need to take this offline and have this conversation, you know, but how we actually get to that point and transition society in such a radical U-turn, I'm not sure that we're going to be able to get there in a time that's going to make a big difference to people. But I'm open to any suggestions.
Oh, yep, wait, all right. One last go, and then we'll share.
He answers back, and then I'll move around. Is that okay? My job is that, okay? Yeah, go, no. Yeah? Sam. I know the public.
I'm going to lose weight doing this. This is good.
Brilliant, thanks. Look, I mean, the point I would like to make as a reflection on the whole day is that, firstly, being here gives me hope. We live in a hopeless time politically. You know, everything that Elena said of the context of what's going on at the moment, it's hopeless. And so here we are surrounded by some amazing people. And I hope that what everybody becomes as a result of this is even greater as leaders of change, as proponents of a better way of doing things. So, you know, that's kind of my challenge to everybody. And I'm going to go away trying to be doing better at what we're already doing, which I think echoes what many other people are doing. But in terms of leadership, I mean, and I'm really pleased to see Richard back, you know, I feel as though it's so unbelievably fundamental to get as far upstream as we possibly can of all of these problems through government leadership and policy. We need radical change within the economic and financial structures and systems, within land distribution, within planning policy, in order to enable all of these good things that everybody is fighting so hard to do. You know, we are day in, day out on the battlefield fighting for better affordable housing that's community-led, that's sustainable, that's regenerative, that's exciting, that people want to live in. But it's against the system. It's against closed doors all the time. So my challenge is we need to lead the whole country, and we need better leaders. We need to demand more of our politicians. And so my challenge to Richard is, please go back to Westminster. Carry on your good fight. We will arm you. Everybody here will give everything they have in their lives to make it better.
Thank you, Sam. Can I add something there? Can I, Richard, I think you're an important person here. And Elena, by the way, just, but can I ask one thing? So I'm going to do a triangle to get to Richard, okay? So I'm going to be stirring the pot. I've been told to stir the pot today. So how do we do that? How do we make sure change, kind of, you talk about policy, kind of land use, yeah? When we have a ping-pong government, one day we have one, the other one we have another one, now we've got local elections, the next one we will have regional, the next one. How do you sort this out? Richard, how do you?
It's not a trap.
Well, picture the scene on the 30th of June. I had someone mentioned Steve Barclay earlier, who's a very old chum of mine. He's the MP for Cambridge North East, and he was at that point the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, a man of great influence. He's, by the way, also a person who thinks there's no problem in human or social affairs to which the answer isn't more modern methods of construction. So he's a man after my own heart, and I'm sure many others here too. But anyway, he was Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister on the 30th of June. I walked into the Cabinet room at number 10, sat in the chair next to where the Prime Minister normally sits, normally reserved for the Cabinet Secretary. Steve walks in, sits in the Prime Minister's chair. To my right comes Andrew Griffith, he's the MP for Arundel and Director of the Prime Minister's Policy Unit, and various suits and spads around. And on the opposite side of the table, we had Stuart Andrew, Michael Gove, and various suits and spads on their side. And this resulted from a conversation I'd had with Steve in the April, where I said, he said, have you had a response to your review yet? That's the one there's still some copies at the back outside to put them on the table there. And I said, no. This was on the 20th of April. So he said, well, can you send me an annoying WhatsApp, an annoying message, and say, why not? So I sent him a polite message saying, why haven't, would it be good if they could, here we are, the 21st of April, 8 months to the day after it was published on the 21st of August, could we possibly have some response? Then within, I think, a week, I had assembled some of my special team of experts in his office in 70 Whitehall, including the head of the policy unit, various other suits, the Director General of Housing, 2 housing ministers who hilariously came in, both of them, late. A week later, we were in the State Dining Room number 10, and then by the 30th of June, we were in the cabinet room, and I thought, this doesn't really get better. An annoying backbencher has got number 10 helping him beat up a government department to do a better job. Harold Wilson, as you know, said a week is a long time in politics. A week later, Steve was Health Secretary, Andrew was Exports Minister, Stuart Andrew had resigned, and Michael Gove had been sacked. I'm thinking, no, I've got to push the rock all the way back up the hill again, and that's what I'm now in the process of doing. But the way to do it, one of the things I've loved about this is the number of people I've met, because to the point made earlier, it just shows there's a lot of hope here, and there are a lot of people trying to do new things. And one of the things I hope I can do is connect people with people who are trying to do new things, and show people who are running the government at the moment that there are new ways, and that there are new needs, and that there are, in fact, some of the very old needs, and connect them with some of the people who are trying to make things happen, so that instead of feeling like they're doing it against the system, if anyone knows Kelvin Campbell or his incredible book, Making Massive Small Change, he says in there somewhere that actually many of the people running the system, the people in local councils, the people in the ministry, very often, although it's difficult for them to understand it, they are the problem. Kelvin says you can't tell them they're the problem, you sort of have to show them that they're the problem. The best way to do that is with war stories, with real live examples. So I regard all of the people here with your war stories and your efforts to try and make things better as ammo for me, frankly. So thank you all for being here, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to talk to all of you, but Agile will help you, will doubtless put you in contact with me. If you want to get a hold of me, please either nobble me afterwards or talk to Agile, and I'll give you my contact details, because I'd love to continue this fight, because I think it's absolutely fundamental. Hashi Mohammed, who wrote this book, A Home of One's Own, which I just got literally a couple of days ago, he says, he wrote an article in the FT when it was published about 10 days ago, he says, the housing crisis sits at the heart of all our ills. To the point about the nature and the philosophy behind housing first. Unless you've got the housing bit right, it's very difficult to get the other bits right. We've taken a long time to learn that, but it seems to me intuitively obvious that that's the case. So we have to keep making that point, keep on forcing people to pay attention, then try to get some change. And I'm going to try and be with you all the way. Thank you.
Just to say, Mohammed was invited to this conference. He wanted to speak at it, he wanted to join us, but he couldn't come, and it's a great book. He's just published it. If you're on Twitter, you've probably seen that. I want to come back to Elly's point about cost, because hasn't the cost of designing better performing buildings just got better, unfortunately, as a result of the energy crisis?
Yes. So one of the things we look at is the cost of a building over its whole lifetime and payback periods. And of course, when the cost of energy is so high and is only rising higher, it makes complete sense to build better, so that our buildings are using less energy and therefore costing a lot less to run. So there's never been a better time than now to argue for exactly that. And that's not just new builds, it's also retrofitting the houses that we have, because of course most of the UK housing stock already exists and it's pretty poorly performing. So, now we've got a massive challenge at a huge scale to make our entire housing stock better performing, so that we're not so reliant on gas and other fossil fuels.
Thank you. We've got another question, Craig.
Where? Sorry?
Here.
Oh, there, yep. Noah.
It's been absolutely wonderful seeing so much power of people coming together. And one of the things, I'm going to speak from my own point of view for a second, rather than sort of my work as an architect. We've just spent £60,000 retrofitting a house for our autistic children. And one of the problems is that I would now desperately love to pile another £25,000, £30,000 into retrofitting the house to be much more energy efficient, to provide a warmer and more sustainable home. So I don't use the wood box that we've got to heat the house because gas is too expensive. One of the biggest problems that we've got is there's very little chance of us extending our credit in order to retrofit the house with the insulation we need in order to, but I desperately want to. And this probably comes back to you, Richard. I feel that we desperately need some form of investment, but with the government coffers running dry, one of the things, and this comes back to the private industry side of things as well, is there an opportunity where private investment can get involved with helping other people upgrade their homes on a long-term repayment system, where you just couldn't go to a bank and say, well, by the way, I know I've overextended myself, but can I have another 25 grand? So my point is that it feels like government needs to work with investment industry to start to close that gap so that people who want to add photovoltaic cells, insulation and the like to their houses can do those things in an affordable way. So that's my point. Yeah.
Thank you. And there's a gentleman over here who you can't see. I'll just... More an answer to that point. Oh, more an answer. Well, we'll take answers.
So my name's Steve Hall. I'm at the University of Leeds for 2 more days, and then I'll be working with Ashton Climate Solutions. What I was doing at the University of Leeds, funded by the UK Energy Research Centre, was looking at a model where you would use the borrowing power of local authorities to fund energy efficiency retrofits and to go on the council tax. So it's not extending your mortgage, it's not going into going to private markets. It's thinking this house gets an upgrade, and therefore its council tax band gets an upgrade. It'll be there for the next 25 years, and you can pretty much make it work. So you'll be spending 53, or for my house, if I worked it out, using Parity Project's amazing tool, I think I'd be saving £53 a month now, and spending £53 a month if it was over 25 years on 2.5%. So you could do it on council tax. The council does carry some of the risk, but the risk that you're taking is that the council ceases to exist, because you would need primary legislation to get the voluntary uplift on council tax approved. But that's a way you could do it outside of extending your own personal or household credit, as more of like an infrastructure thing. So it's just an idea that we've been kicking around.
Brilliant. So economic and financial mechanisms to change. I just want to come back to investors, property owners, private. Paul's not here to defend himself. Paul is a property investor. He's a developer of his own house. It's a mutually owned MOS, Mutual Home Ownership Society, but the people at Lilac, and I love them dearly, when I describe them as developers, they go, no, we're not developers, we're co-housing builders. They are getting a return on investment. It happens every day when they open the door and the children run around and the trees grow and all the beautiful things that happen there. But they are getting a return on their investment linked to the wage index rather than the property index. A slightly different return on investment, but way better than my SIPS is returning on investment currently. So I think it's all things need to be done, both the state, councils, authorities, communities, and investors. And I think there's quite a lot of money wants to come into this space to support financial mechanisms that could just turn the wheel a bit better for retrofit and new build. I just get to hold the microphone, so I'm going to hand it back. Thank you.
So we got
I just wanted to add one quick point on mortgages and finance, because one of the first people I took evidence from in the review was from a guy at the Mortgage Advisory Bureau. To my surprise, he said the mortgage industry in this country is way ahead of the regulators. They are tooling up now for the day when the Financial Conduct Authority comes down the road and says, what are you doing to save the planet? And they're looking at green mortgages, which, by the way, are completely normal in Germany, whereby if your house is performs to a certain standard, you get 2 percentage points off the cost of your mortgage. And as mortgages inevitably return back to sort of normal, sane levels, we've managed to create a unique situation where we're going to be able to take the blame for it entirely, although it was probably going to happen anyway. I mean, it takes quite a bit of skill to do that, doesn't it? But anyway, there we are. But it was going to happen anyway, and those of you who remember the 80s and 90s will remember that 4, 5, 6% mortgages would have been considered quite good at the time. But the obvious bigger problem is the nature of the retrofitting, which is the biggest problem we have to solve, is who's going to pay for it? Well, you can all pay for it as taxpayers. I'm sure you'll be thrilled about that. Or you can borrow it, although the government seems to be having difficulty selling its government bonds at the moment. Or the people who are going to live in the house are going to pay for it. That's the most likely thing, which means they'll have to take on extra debt. But if there are mortgage products out there that say, yes, it is going to cost you an extra 24,000 quid, but here is a product that will help you pay for it where you're 2.5% less than everybody else, because once you've done it, your thermal standards of performance are going to be so much higher. That is going to make a material difference. And for the 32 million houses that we have to refit and retrofit, that's, I think, the way it's going to go. And anytime you get the chance to make this to a policymaker, do, because I think they're behind the curve on this. The mortgage industry itself and some, I will use the word, developers are actually way ahead. But it's a very, very important facet of how we solve this problem, or this collection of problems.
I've got 3 hands. Come on, Elly. The lady over there and the lady at the back.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on that point about funding retrofit as well, because another of my roles is sitting on the Climate and Nature Partnership Board for Hereford Council. And one of the challenges they've got, having declared a climate emergency, is to make the entire housing stock in Herefordshire zero carbon by 2030. And the question is, how do we fund this? And some of the sort of innovative funding models they've been looking at are things like local climate bonds, which are local authority regulated investments that local people can put their capital into. And then they invest them in low energy projects, retrofitting homes, and people can get a return on that investment. So it's a little bit like crowdfunding. Then there is property linked finance, which means that your mortgage doesn't sit with the individual, it sits with the property. So that people who might be slightly older might not be able to take out a mortgage to retrofit their home, but if it's linked to the property, when they sell it, the loan goes with the house. And lastly, we've been looking at demand aggregated finance, which means that whole streets or communities can get together and use the leverage of slightly bigger buying power to club together and get better prices and better services as a group rather than as an individual.
Thank you, Elly. We've got 2 more questions. Yeah, here, and then at the back.
Just around both your points, is there any mileage in looking at diversifying like mixed-use developments? So obviously where you're trying to provide affordable housing, if the only revenue stream once the development's completed is the rents, you're obviously ceilinged by what the local market rent is, and then 80% of that is classed as affordable. I don't know if that's national, that's what it is in my area. Is there any examples of, or is there any opportunity for innovation in using mixed-use developments so that the revenue stream is not just rents, but it's also maybe some of the properties are sold, but you also maybe have commercial, retail, natural spaces, areas of regeneration, urban gardens, example, that there is a revenue stream that comes in from those as well, indirectly or directly. Has anyone heard of any examples of this, or do you think that that's an opportunity for developers or property investors to look at this diverse type of regeneration of land than just rents or just houses?
So you're talking about the other sources of income subsidising the rents effectively within the development. Yes, so that mixed use thing, yeah, absolutely. And I think there's some really exciting things like that. There's some, certainly I'm aware of some really good community projects where they've got sort of community employment, maybe for like a workshop or a shop or a cafe for people learning disabilities. But I'm not sure that that has an income revenue that subsidises the housing, but that certainly works really well. So you've got employment on site as well as accommodation. I know some veterans projects using that kind of model as well. And I mean, Emmaus effectively uses that model, doesn't it? That's the model that they use. I'm sure there are, but I think it's something that definitely needs exploring more, isn't it? And looking at as part of a solution, I think it's, yeah.
However, I'm going to stir the pot a bit. You have seen more and more kind of mainstream developments where they just kind of jump the planning systems. They wait for 5 years, they have got really good mixed, they have got a really good set of tenancies, they've got very good kind of services for the community and kind of everyone, and suddenly they wait for 5 years and they change it, and we have got more really good houses privately owned. So, we've got someone else in the back.
And I'll walk and talk. So binary models don't work anymore. You can't have a completely private sector binary model. They have to be blended models. And I think because anybody under the age of 36 in this room is probably saying, well, it's all very nice talking about owning a home, but I'm not able to do it. I get my 3-minute warning, so I'm going to hand over to you.
I totally agree. I think we need to step out of our silos. We're still thinking in silos in this room, very much so. The people who are on social housing, in fact, blended housing would make much more sense. We need to build social capital. There is a lot of loneliness. There is extraordinary potential. There's so much to learn from the developers, you know, from good practice in developers, but community as developer, rent to buy is a possibility. Baugemeinschaft in Germany, where the community comes together, employs an architect and builds apartment buildings that are really high quality living at 80% of the cost of just an other apartment. We have a lot of people who are asset rich, who, if I was Glenn Armstrong, the non-ethical developer, I would go to Mark, my neighbour, who's old and crotchety and living in a house that's falling down around him, and I'd say, look, I'm going to buy this house off you for this price. I'm going to give you an apartment in your house if you want it here, or I'll give you an apartment, and then we're going to make this place into an extraordinary co-housing space. And I would learn from Luke Spike, who is the boutique hotel developer from Bristol, with his funky design and high quality renovation, millennial markets, self-contained apartments, or a digital lifestyle option blend rental with buying. I'd be talking to pensioners, to the pension funds, and say, invest in community housing. You'll get a 5% return, or what, you know, like there's a lot of money sloshing around in our culture at the moment. We're all talking about, you know, we're about to die because we're going to be living like our parents did without heating. Actually, there's a lot of money around. We've just got to step out of our silos, be creative. Think about how young people can, like, we have so much asset from diversity, you know. Why do we need to have a settler, like a gypsy settler plot outside of town? Why can't it be in the middle of town? Why can't it be where they want to be, but, you know, like with much more sense of getting to know each other? Social capital, that's my thing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm in a rush here, so I'm going to just kind of stop it there for a second. Great, I'm going to do that. I'm going to give kind of a probably half a minute summary of the day, if that makes any sense, if that's okay. I'm looking at him like if he was the boss. Well, I am the boss here. I think what we've talked about, or I would kind of summarize the day for me, or what I have learned, and talking to Elly and Julia, has been, is all about healthy, inclusive housing towards equity, If we could manage to get to that point, it will be something phenomenal. The complexity of housing as a wicked problem allows us to get away with murder, and sometimes murder that does not give us hope. But there is a lot of hope in this room today, and we should kind of grasp that and see how we can make change happen. Clearly, looking at you, Michael, we need the government to listen. But more importantly, we need to make those ones that do not believe what happens on the ground, like happens today, that change is needed and needs to happen. We can't continue to hide behind someone else's problems, because if we don't break those silos, social capital will not happen, and we will end up dying lonely, alone, in concrete, horrible, asphalt neighborhoods in the future. We need to change the narrative for the better. We need hope. Thank you.